You look better than girls my age. How I fell in love with my best friend's mom. I never thought my heart would beat faster for my best friend's mother. It all started with a simple request to take a picture of her next to a bed of flowers on a fall Sunday. But that photo shoot changed everything. My opinion of her opinion of herself, and the limits of what I thought was possible. What seemed like an innocent favor turned into a story that shattered all the rules of friendship, age, and decency. Before we continue our story, please tell us in the comments where you are watching from.
My name is Jaden Collins. I'm 23 years old, and I just graduated from college.
I work as a graphic design assistant at a small startup in Seattle. Not what I dreamed of when I was sketching logos in my dorm room, but it's enough for a tiny apartment near Capitol Hill. Most days are the same. I wake up, drink black coffee, struggle with Photoshop, and try to meet deadlines. On the weekends, I sometimes go out to a bar with friends or just sit on the couch. Nothing special, no grand romance. Just a guy trying to figure out where he fits in a city that feels too big. I've had a few relationships in college, but nothing serious, nothing real. Maybe I'm too picky.
Or maybe I'm just waiting for something I don't recognize.
My best friend from freshman year of college is Liam Harrison. We became close over terrible cafeteria food and old sci-fi movies. He now works at a financial services firm downtown, wears shirts that always look freshly pressed, and still makes the same stupid jokes he made in college. We remained close after graduation. If there's one person I trust, it's him. Tall, athletic, with short, dark blonde hair and a perpetual smile. Liam was always the life of the party. He's the kind of guy who can get anyone talking, connect with anyone. His life seemed orderly and stable. His job, his career, his plans for the future. Sometimes I envied his confidence. His mother, Danielle Harrison, was always there, a soft background music. She's 42 years old and a high school art teacher, always composed, but never loud. I met her the first week Liam invited me to his house, my freshman year of college. She asked me if I wanted a soda, told us not to make too much noise, and smiled at me with that quiet smile she has. I knew she'd been divorced when Liam was in high school, but I never asked for details. She was simply Liam's mother, kind, steady, and, in my mind, from another world. Danielle was a woman of medium height, slender, with caramel brown hair that she usually wore in a bun at work. She had expressive brown eyes, slightly crinkled at the corners, marks of laughter, and perhaps fatigue. Her hands were always in motion, arranging her hair, holding a cup of coffee, gesturing as she explained something. She moved gracefully, but without pretension, like someone accustomed to taking care of others and forgetting about herself. There was a comforting gentleness in her voice. But sometimes I caught a note of loneliness, as if she were speaking from an empty house, even when there were people around. She had been divorced for 8 years, when Liam was just starting high school. Her ex-husband, Robert, had left him for a younger colleague at his law firm, a classic story from which Danielle never seemed to fully recover. She didn't talk about it openly, but I would sometimes see her stiffen, looking at old family photos on the wall, the three of them smiling at a picnic long ago. After the divorce, she had devoted herself to Liam and his work, building an invisible wall around herself. Everyone thought of her as strong, independent, and weathering the storms of life. But I began to understand that behind that strength was a loneliness that she had grown tired of. On that fall Sunday, I was riding my bike to Liam's house in Fremont to return the tattered copy of Dune we'd been arguing about for weeks. The fall air was crisp, The sun was trying to peek through the clouds, as it always does in Seattle, but the sky was more gray than blue. I leaned my bike against the white picket fence I'd seen 100 times, the paint peeling in places. Liam's car wasn't in the driveway, which was odd. I thought about just dropping the book off and driving away. As I walked down the driveway, I saw Danielle on the porch. She was kneeling by a wooden planter filled with bright marigolds and some purple flowers I didn't know the names of. Her hands were covered in mud. She was wearing a loose white shirt tucked into faded jeans. Her caramel brown hair was pulled back in a loose bun, a few strands catching the faint sunlight. She looked focused, but there was something else about her expression, a hint of fatigue, maybe loneliness. I couldn't quite figure out where she was. I was about to turn around when she looked up and caught me looking at her. "Jaden," she called out, her voice warm but surprised. "I wasn't expecting to see you. Liam's not here. I think he's in a work meeting." "Oh," I said, holding up the book as if it were proof that I wasn't some shady character on the porch. "I just wanted to return this. I can come by later." He stood up, shaking the dirt off his hands, and smiled slightly. "No, don't go. Do you have a minute? I need a favor." I shrugged. "Of course. What happened?" She nodded towards the flowers. "I just put this together. I wanted to take a picture for my art class's Instagram, to inspire the kids. But I'm hopeless with a camera, and there's no one around to help me." She laughed softly, a little embarrassed. "Do you think you could take some pictures?" I chuckled. "I'm not a professional, Daniel. I just play around with Photoshop at work, but I'll try." She smiled a little wider. "Just Daniel, you're not one of my students." I pulled out my phone and took a step back, trying to see the scene as a design project. She was standing by the flower pot. The soft daylight fell on her face and hair. The raw concrete wall behind her made the white shirt and flowers even more vibrant. "Okay, tilt your head a little," I said. "Maybe smile?" She did, but it didn't seem fake. Her smile was gentle, as if she were remembering something pleasant. Her eyes caught the light. There was a hint of sadness in them, but also something warm and open. I took several photos, moving to get different angles, the flowers, the light on her hair, the way her hands rested on the edge of the pot, the dirt on her fingers, but her touch was gentle and trusting. When I handed her the phone, she leaned closer to look at the screen. Her shoulder touched mine for a second. My body noticed before my brain. "Oh God," she whispered, almost more to herself than to me. "I look, I don't know, like I'm 30 again." She laughed, but there was a slight crack in it, as if she was surprised by how much this meant to her. "You don't have to be 30 to look good," I blurted out. The words flew out faster than I could stop them. My face was burning. It sounded like a banal introduction, but I was serious. He didn't laugh. Instead, he looked at me. He really looked at me. His lips parted, as if searching for the right answer. "Thanks, Jaden," she said softly. "Can you send me those photos? I'd like to keep them." "Of course. Where should I send it?" I asked. He paused, then took out his phone. "If you don't mind, I'll save your number. It's easier that way." I tried to act nonchalant, my heart pounding in my chest. He entered my number and sent me a short message, just a smiley face and thanks again. I sent him the photos back, then parted ways and headed for my bike, the book still in my bag. On the way home, I couldn't help but think about the way she looked at those pictures, the way her eyes had softened. It wasn't just gratitude. It was like no one had made her feel this way in a long time.
That night, when I got home, I threw Dune on the coffee table and collapsed onto the tattered couch. I opened my phone and looked at the photos again. I noticed little details I had missed before. The way the light framed the curve of her cheek. The way her dirt-stained hands still looked soft. I told myself that I was simply proud of the photos. Around 9 o'clock that evening, my phone vibrated. I almost dropped it when I saw his name. Thank you, Jaden. These photos made this middle-aged lady feel like she could still get attention, with a winking emoji. I stared at the message. The blink hit me harder than it should have. It was the same woman who had asked us to be quiet while we played video games. I typed, deleted, typed again. Everything sounded either too dry or too flirtatious. Finally, I sent, "You don't need magic to attract attention, Daniel. You just need someone who can see you." My stomach clenched as soon as I hit the send button. Had I gone too far? A moment later came her answer. "You're cute. Good night, Jaden." The pulse did not calm down for a long time. The next morning, she texted me again, asking if I had photoshopped the photos. I said no. That led to a conversation about my work as a designer, then about her art classes. It was easy, relaxed, but also new. I wasn't used to talking to her without Liam by my side. 3 days later, another message appeared. "Want some coffee? My reward for the photos." I stared at the screen. He didn't mention Liam. He didn't say he'd be there. "Sure," I typed. "Free tomorrow afternoon. Tell me the location." He chose a small cafe near Lake Union, with wooden tables and a view of the water. I convinced myself it was just gratitude, just coffee. But deep down, I knew it was the beginning of something I wasn't ready to name. If Danielle's photo shoot opened the door for me, then the Lakeside Cafe opened it wide enough for me to enter. The cafe she chose was right on Lake Union, a small place with wooden tables and large windows overlooking the water. As I walked in, the smell of roasting coffee and warm pastries enveloped me. There was soft jazz playing in the background, something old and smooth, making the room seem slower than the rest of Seattle. I arrived a few minutes early, but she was already standing by the window, a ceramic mug in her hands. She was wearing a dark blue sweater and jeans, her hair loose curls falling over her shoulders. The gray light outside framed her face, and for a second I stood there, wondering when exactly she had gone from being Liam's mother to someone I couldn't stop thinking about. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "Hi, Jaden," she said. "I didn't expect you to be late. I'm always early." "I'm not late," I said, sitting down across from him. "You're just in class." She laughed, that gentle, warm laugh that had become familiar. "My fault. When you work with teenagers, you learn to get ahead of them." I ordered black coffee for me, latte for her. I waited for her to talk about Liam, to ask if I'd seen him, to talk about him the way parents usually do. She didn't. Instead, she asked me about my work, how I got into design, what I liked and hated about it. I told her about the sleepless nights in college trying to finish projects, about the professor who told me I had a sense of balance even when my grades didn't show it. I complained about annoying clients who wanted 5 logos for the price of 1. Danielle listened as if none of this was boring. Her eyes remained fixed on me, confident and curious. "You're really good at this," she said. "The photos you took of me weren't just good photos. They made me feel seen." I shifted in my chair, looking down at my mug. I just pointed the phone and pressed the button. She shook her head. "No, you saw something I forgot. It's important."
Her voice was soft and had the same little crackle I had heard on the porch. I didn't have the right words to respond, so I held her gaze a little longer than was safe. We talked about her work before, about tables covered in paint and noisy children complaining about perspective and shadows. She told me a story about a student who turned a bowl of fruit into something that looked like a bunch of balloons. I didn't have the heart to correct him, she said with a smile. He was so proud of it. I found myself laughing and moving closer, forgetting for a moment that she was older, that she was my best friend's mother. She told me that she loved jazz, how she used to sneak into clubs in her 20s just to hear live music. I admitted that I didn't really understand jazz, but I would try to listen to Miles Davis. "Don't try too hard," she said. "Just let him penetrate you." When we finally stepped outside, the sky was turning pink over the water. He pulled his sweater tighter around his body. "It was nice," she said. "Thanks for coming." "Thanks for the coffee," I replied. "You didn't have to buy it." "I wanted to, too," she said. "You've been nice company lately." The words stuck in my mind the whole bike ride home. Company. Not Liam's friend. Not the guy hanging around. Just company. After that, things never went back to normal. They changed slowly, like the seasons, and you don't notice until one day the trees turn a different color. We started texting more often. First about photos, then about work, then about random things. She sent me photos of her students' paintings. Messy but full of life. I sent her sketches I'd done on lunch breaks, little doodles I'd never shown anyone. "You're wasting your talent on sketches," she once wrote, with a smiley face. I smiled on the phone more than I would have admitted. We started meeting occasionally. A coffee here, a walk there. Sometimes we would walk around Green Lake, the tree-lined path just starting to turn red and gold. She would point out the way the light fell on the water, or the way a dog would chase its tail, as if it had all the time in the world. I would nod and pretend to look at her, but I would look at her more than at the view. One afternoon, she asked me to help her repaint the old fence in the backyard. Liam was at work. The sun was shining, faintly, but it was trying. We stood side by side, brushes in hand, painting the peeling white boards. "You missed the right place," I said, pointing to a strip of gray wood. "Oh, please," she replied. "Art teacher, do you remember?" She splashed me with a small drop of paint. It landed on my cheek, and she laughed. I dipped my brush and drew a thin line on her forearm in response. For a second, we were just two people making a mess and laughing in the yard. No age difference, no titles, no labels. "You're not as bad at this as I thought," she finally said, giving me a sideways glance. "High praise," I replied. "I'll add that to my resume." Later, I thought about that day and realized how comfortable I felt with her. But in that moment, I just felt light. Comfortable. Seen. Then the storm came. About a month after that first coffee, Seattle was hit by one of those torrential downpours that left the entire city soaking wet. Thunder was rumbling outside, low and steady. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop, pretending to work on a logo, when my phone vibrated. It was her. "Hi," she wrote. "Sorry to bother you. The power just went out here. I'm alone, and I don't handle storms very well. Any chance you're free?" I stared at the message. I didn't think. I just moved. "I'm already on my way," I replied. I grabbed a flashlight and a pack of old candles from the kitchen drawer, put on a hoodie, and rode my bike through the rain. The streets were slippery and dark. By the time I got to her house, I was soaking wet.
Danielle opened the door, holding a small, battery-powered lantern.
The soft light made her look both younger and older. Her hair was tied back, and she was wearing a gray cardigan over a plain shirt. "You shouldn't have come," she said, but relief was visible all over her face. "I wanted to," I said, entering. The house was quiet. No humming fridge, no TV, just the sound of rain on the windows. Liam was staying with a friend. He told me we were alone. I placed the candles on the coffee table and lit them one by one. A warm, flickering light filled the living room, banishing the shadows. We sat on the couch, close but not touching, the space between us feeling very small. Outside, thunder rumbled again. She jumped, clasping her hands in her lap. "You really don't like storms, do you?" I asked. She smiled weakly. "That's stupid. When I was a kid, my dad would sit with me and tell me that thunder was just the sky talking. But now..." Her gaze fell on a framed photo on the wall. A younger version of herself stood there, with Liam and her ex-husband, all smiles at a picnic from long ago. "Now it just makes me feel small." He paused. The candlelight made his eyes sparkle. "I was a wife, a mother, a teacher," she said softly. "At some point, I stopped being just Danielle. I was there for everyone else. And then one day, I realized that no one really saw me anymore." My chest tightened. I didn't know how to fix the problem. I wasn't sure anyone could. But I knew what I was seeing through the lens of my phone and with my own eyes. "I see you," I said softly. Then he looked at me. He really looked at me, as if trying to decide if he could trust what I was saying. "Not just as Liam's mom," I added. "I mean you. Your art, your jokes, the way you talk about colors like they're a language. I see you." His breath hitched. He moved a little closer. Our shoulders touched, and this time neither of us pulled away. "Have you ever felt invisible?" she asked, barely audible. I thought about my desk at work, how easy it was to be just another nameless guy behind a screen. "Yes," I said, "more than I'd like to admit." She nodded, as if the answer meant more than I realized. I sat there in silence. The storm outside had died down. The room was filled with candlelight and something else I didn't know how to call it. When the electricity finally came back on, we both blinked. The spell was broken. She laughed softly, embarrassed. "It seems like heaven has finished its conversation," she said. We stood up. He started blowing out the candles one by one. I took the flashlight. "Thanks for coming," she said at the door. "There really wasn't any need." "I know," I said, "but I'm glad I came." She smiled, small but real. "Me too." I drove home in a light drizzle. My clothes were still wet. My head was buzzing. I hadn't told Liam where I was. I didn't know how. How could I explain to him that his mom had called me when she was afraid of the dark, and I had driven without thinking? Something fragile formed between Danielle and me that night. A small, bright thing that lived in the space between what we were and what we weren't allowed to be. And I had no idea what to do with it. The stormy night had changed something between us. I felt it in every message after that night. Life on the surface continued as usual. I still trudged to the startup every morning, struggling with fonts and color palettes, trying to make boring client ideas interesting. On Fridays, I still drank with my colleagues and pretended to be just another 20-something trying to figure out her life. But beneath it all, There was a quiet line between Danielle and me. It hummed beneath every message, every little moment. She sent a photo of a student's painting, an unusual mix of colors. "Tell me this doesn't look like a crime scene," she wrote. I sent back a sketch of the same painting, transformed into a cartoon monster. "Please." "Contemporary art, corrected." She responded with a laughing face and, "You're ridiculous." And I looked at my phone longer than I should have. I didn't tell Liam any of this. The storm, the candles, the way he'd ask me if I'd ever felt invisible. Every time I thought about talking about it, something tightened in my chest, and the words remained clenched behind my teeth. A few weeks went by like this, steady and strange. Then, one afternoon, Liam texted me. "Hey man, my mom's turning 42 next weekend. I'm having a little party in the backyard. You better come over. I need help with the grill." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I didn't even think about a birthday. "Yes, I will," I replied. "Do you need anything?" "Just beer and your useless muscles," he replied. On the day of the party, I arrived on my bike with 6 bottles of craft beer dangling from my handlebars and a knot in my stomach. The sun was setting. The sky was pale pink and orange, and there was that fresh chill in the air that meant fall had truly arrived. Their backyard looked different than usual. Liam had strung warm yellow string lights on the patio, glowing softly across the grass. Folding tables were set with paper plates and bowls of chips. The same planter, filled with marigolds, sat by the steps, glowing in the fading light. Liam was at the grill, flipping burgers and trying to look like he knew what he was doing. A few of his friends were standing nearby, talking loudly about something I couldn't understand. Danielle was moving between the patio and the yard, carrying a tray of drinks, laughing with one of her classmates. Her hair was loose, falling in loose curls over her shoulders. She was wearing a simple green dress that ended just above her knees. Nothing flashy, but my chest still tightened when I saw her. She caught my eye for a second from across the yard and gave me a small, personal smile. Not the welcoming smile she had for everyone else. Something gentler, just for me. "Dude," Liam shouted. "Finally! Come here. These burgers are putting my life in danger." I forced myself to look away from her and went to help him, putting the beer on the table and pretending my heart wasn't trying to beat out of my chest. The party itself was small. A few of Liam's friends, 2 of Danielle's classmates, music from a Bluetooth speaker, the quiet hum of conversation. People were talking about her, laughing about how great she was as an art teacher, and she was smiling and saying thanks and waving her hand away, as if she didn't know what to do with herself. I watched her from the edge of the room as she moved through the crowd, making sure everyone had drinks, checking on the food, asking if anyone needed anything. She was always giving, always moving. Every now and then, we would cross paths, and she would lightly touch my arm as she passed me, or lean in to say something small, like, "Thanks for coming," and it sounded harder than it should have. As night approached, people began to leave. Cars pulled off the sidewalk. The music died down. The sky darkened completely, and the fairy lights became the main glow in the yard. One of Liam's friends came running, asking for help with his car, which wouldn't start. Liam groaned, but followed him outside, looking over his shoulder at me. "Start cleaning up, man," he said. "I'll be right back." Soon, it was just Danielle and I in the backyard. I began to set down the empty plates and throw the glasses in the trash bag. The soft chirping of crickets filled the space where the music had been. When I turned, I saw her standing by the balcony railing, a half-drunk glass of wine in her hand, staring at the dark outlines of the trees beyond the fence. She seemed smaller now,
Not the strong, self-possessed teacher, but just a lonely woman at the end of her own party. I approached, the trash bag dangling from my hand. "Hey," I said softly, "are you okay?" The celebrant needs to smile. He blinked and turned to face me. His lips curved into a small smile, but his eyes were moist, reflecting the garlands. "It was a beautiful evening," she said. "Liam did great. And you?" "Thanks for the help." "You deserve this," I said. I dropped the trash bag and shoved my hands in my pockets, trying not to look at the way the lights were gliding through her hair. Not just the party, all of it. "You deserve to be celebrated." His smile hissed. He looked down at the glass, turning it slowly between his fingers. "You're too nice," she said softly. "Most people just see the mother, the teacher, the one who has everything under control. That's what I'm supposed to be, right?" She sighed lightly. "But tonight I keep thinking about how quickly the years have flown by." I blinked and suddenly I was 42. She looked at me again, and for the first time all evening she gave up her practiced smile. "For so long I've been what everyone else needed," she said. "Liam's mom, the trusted colleague, the person who keeps in touch. But sometimes I wonder if it's wrong to want someone to see me as a woman, not just a role." The air between us grew heavy. I could hear the faint sounds of Liam talking to a friend outside, the distant hum of a car engine. But everything seemed far away. Without thinking too much, I moved closer. My heart was pounding, but I didn't pull away. I reached out and took her hand free, my fingers sliding over hers before lightly intertwining with them. Her skin was warm. A small shiver ran down my arm. "It's not wrong," I said softly. "And I see you, Danielle, not just as Liam's mother, as you." He took a deep breath. His eyes were shining, and a single tear slid down his cheek. He didn't pull his hand away. Instead, he squeezed mine, caressing my wrists with his thumb, as if he feared that if he let me go, something important would disappear. "I shouldn't say that," she whispered. "You're so young, Jaden, and Liam trusts you. Everything is so..." She shook her head as if her thoughts were racing too fast. "I know," I said. My voice was low, confident. "I think about him too. But I'm here because I want to, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." She held my gaze, and the world seemed to narrow before her eyes, the lights and the feel of her hand in mine. For a moment I thought she might come closer, might close the gap, might erase the line we were pretending still existed. The car engine roared outside. Voices reached us. The spell was broken. Danielle blinked, took a shaky breath, and slowly released my hand. She quickly wiped her cheek, as if she could wipe away a tear that had already fallen. "We should finish cleaning," she said, her voice trying to regain its confidence, "before Liam comes back and panics over the mess." "Yes," I said, picking up the trash bag with fingers that still felt his touch. "Correct." We cleaned at a leisurely pace, side by side, but without touching. Every time our hands touched, it felt like a spark. When I finally lifted the bike off the curb, Liam patted me on the back, thanking me for my help and joking about how weak he was at the grill. Danielle was standing on the porch, her arms crossed, watching us. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me the same small, intimate smile she had given me before. On the way home, the cold air hit my face, but it didn't clear my mind. I relived that moment on the terrace over and over again. Her words, her hand in mine,
The look in her eyes when I told her I saw her. Something had changed. Not in a light way, perhaps, in a serious, hard way. I knew we had crossed a line. Even if there hadn't been a kiss, no big scene. A subtle line, but a line nonetheless. And, as much as I should have feared what it meant, I couldn't wish it weren't there. My best friend's mom's request to take her photo was supposed to be a small favor. A few clicks on her phone on a quiet Sunday afternoon. But in the weeks leading up to her birthday, I kept thinking, if I'd known what that moment would turn into, maybe I would have been even more nervous. Or maybe I would have said the same thing I did later. You look better than girls my age. After the party, our connection didn't fade. On the contrary, it got heavier, more real. On the surface, nothing had changed. We still went to work. We still drank bad coffee at the office. We still nodded off during client calls. Liam and I still had the occasional beer. He would talk about stocks, about his boss, about the occasional office drama. Every time he mentioned his mother, my chest would tighten. He had no idea what was going on between his best friend and the woman who had raised him. Beyond all of that, Danielle was like a quiet second heartbeat to my day. Our messages were constant. Every morning or evening there was something. She would send me a photo of a dirty painting. The student tried to draw a cat, she wrote. He ended up drawing a purple cloud with paws. I sent a quick sketch, turning it into a cartoon superhero. Fixed. You can pay for my coffee. She responded with a laughing smile and understood. One afternoon, a message made me stop abruptly. I still have that picture you took as my phone background, she wrote. It makes me smile every time I see it. I stared at the text, my heart pounding. That photo on the porch, next to the flowers, the tired sadness in the soft light. If you want a new one, I typed. I still have a phone, and plenty of time. There was a pause. Then he sent a single red heart sticker. No words. Somehow, that spoke louder than anything he could have said. A few days later, she wrote again. Free Saturday. I'm thinking of updating my photos. Something a little more organized, for school and maybe for myself. My stomach turned. Yes, I replied. Tell me when. 3 hours, she wrote, at my place. Bring your designer eye. When Saturday came, I almost canceled twice. I sat in my apartment, staring at my reflection, wondering if I should dress up, then gave in and stayed in jeans and a clean black t-shirt. This time I grabbed my best camera instead of my phone, slung it over my shoulder, and drove to Fremont. The sky was clear, that rare blue you get in Seattle when the clouds finally retreat. Her house looked the same as always, but my chest tightened as I walked down the driveway. Danielle opened the door before I could knock. She was wearing a simple blue blouse and dark jeans that fit her perfectly. Her hair was loose, falling over her shoulders. She was wearing light makeup, just enough to highlight her eyes. Wow, I said before I could stop myself. You look great. She smiled, a little shyly. Great? Is that all? Really great, I corrected her. You look wonderful. He stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled of coffee and something sweet, maybe vanilla. I thought we could try some shots by the window, she said, pointing to the living room where the light was streaming in. Then maybe back on the porch, if that's okay. Whatever, I said. You're the customer. She rolled her eyes but smiled. I started at the large window in front. I asked her to sit on the edge of the couch, then stand up, and then turn slightly toward the light. I told her where to tilt her chin, where to look. All the while, my brain was buzzing. trying to focus on the room and not on the fact that we were here together again. "Relax your shoulders," I said. "You look like you're expecting the principal to yell at you." She laughed, and the tension on her face melted away. I took a few photos at that moment, capturing a sincere smile, one that reached her eyes. "Look," I said, showing him the screen. She leaned towards me, and her shoulder touched mine again. The same electrifying sensation went through me. "Oh," she whispered, "I really like these. They make me look smoother, less tired." "It's because you're gentler," I said softly. "You just don't see." He looked at me, and for a second neither of us looked at the camera. Then he cleared his throat. "Come on," she said. "Let's try some outside. That's where it all started, remember?" We moved onto the porch. The pot was still there. The marigolds wilted, but still vibrant. I asked her to lean against the railing, then sit on the steps, bathed in the light. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked at me, impatient. "Like that?" she asked. Something tightened in my chest. The way she sat there, calm and open, made my mouth act before my mind. "Honestly," I said, raising the camera but not taking another picture, "you look better than girls my age." The words floated in the air, clear. There was no way to take them back. His eyes widened slightly. His lips parted. He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He just looked at me as if I had just said something he had been waiting to hear for years. "Jaden," she said softly. I lowered the camera halfway, my hands suddenly sweating. "I'm sorry, that sounded wrong. Well, not wrong. I was serious. It's just..." He moved closer, closing the small space between us. The veranda became very quiet. The sounds of the street disappeared into a dull hum. "Don't apologize," she said. "You were serious." I nodded, my throat dry. "Yes, I did." For a moment we just stood there, the cool fall air around us, the sunlight bathing the edges of her hair. I felt her pounding in my ears. "It's crazy, isn't it?" she whispered. "You're 23. I'm 42. You're my son's best friend." "I know," I said. "Believe me, I know." "Then why do I feel like I can breathe easier when you're around?" she asked, her eyes shining. "Why do I feel more myself with you than I have lately?" I swallowed hard. "Because I feel the same way. And I've tried to pretend it's not so. For Liam, for you, for me. But I can't keep pretending like nothing's happening." A tear slid down her cheek, but she smiled through her fingers. Not a big smile, but a small and sincere one. "You really see me," she said. "I understand," I replied. "And I don't just see you as someone's mother. I see you as Danielle, a woman who loves jazz and drawing, who hates storms, who laughs at my silly drawings, who makes this big city seem less empty." He let out a sigh that sounded like a quiet sob and a mixed laugh. Before I could say anything, she reached out and touched my face with one hand, her fingers warm on my skin. I froze, every muscle tense, but I didn't pull away. "Tell me to stop," she whispered. I looked into her eyes and knew I wouldn't do it. "I won't do it," I said. She leaned down and kissed me, slowly, tenderly, without haste or wildness, just really. Her lips were soft and careful, as if she was afraid I might break. My hand found her waist, not pulling her, just resting there.
For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of us on that porch. No age difference, no labels, no guilt. Just the woman who thought she was gone, and the guy who accidentally caught her light in a photo. When we pulled away, we stayed close, her forehead resting on mine. "This changes everything," she said softly. "I know," I replied, "and we can't hide this forever. Not from Liam, not from anyone." Fear flashed across his face. "He'll feel hurt. He might get angry. He might hate me," I said. "At least for a while." She searched my eyes. "Is it worth it? Or is it worth it?" I thought about all the nights I'd stared at the phone, waiting for her name to light up on the screen. How I felt when she laughed. How she looked at me like I mattered. How I felt sitting here now, with her hands still on my cheek. "Yes," I said. "It's worth it for me. But it should be worth it for you too." He was silent for a long time. Then he nodded, slowly but confidently. "Then we'll tell him," she said. "Not today, but soon. Together." "Together," I repeated. We went back inside and looked at the photos on my camera. We were standing shoulder to shoulder, our hands touching, our bodies very aware of each other. The photos were good, better than I expected. She looked strong and gentle at the same time, vivid. "Send these to me," she said. "All of them, even the ones I don't deserve." "You deserve it all," I said. When I left, the air felt different, as if the city had moved a few inches. I knew things were going to get complicated, difficult, messy. There would be pain. There would be questions. There would be a long conversation with Liam, which I had already started replaying in my head. But as I drove home, the sun was setting. The air was caressing my face, and my phone was vibrating in my pocket. I stopped and checked it. "Thank you," her message read, "for having me, for today, for everything." I typed the answer with confident hands. "Always," I wrote. It started with a photo. I'm not going to pretend that was all. I stuffed my phone back in my pocket and drove off again, the wheels rolling on the sidewalk. I wasn't sure how this story would end. All I knew was this. My best friend's mom asked me to take a picture of her. I saw her through the lens, and somewhere between the flowers, the storms, the coffee, and the porch, I realized I wasn't just capturing an image. The next few weeks were a strange balance between secrecy and honesty. On the one hand, Daniel and I were no longer pretending. We knew how we felt. We knew we had crossed a line that most people would consider unacceptable. On the other hand, we were hiding from everyone else, especially Liam. We would meet whenever we could, when she wasn't home, when she was at work, or with friends. Sometimes it was just coffee at the same little cafe on the shores of Lake Union where it all began. Other times we would walk through parks on the outskirts of town where the chances of running into someone we knew were slimmer. We would talk about everything. Her childhood in a small town in Oregon, my dreams of becoming more than a designer's assistant, books, music, life. She told me about Liam when he was little, how he tried to build a rocket out of cardboard boxes at 8, how he cried at his first school play because he forgot his lines. I saw love and pride in her eyes, but also a hint of guilt when she realized she was talking about her son to the man she was kissing. "I feel like a terrible mother," she said one day,
as I sat on a bench by Elliott Bay.
Fog was rolling in from the water, and few people were around. He trusts me. He trusts you. And we. She didn't finish the sentence. I took her hand. We're not doing anything wrong, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. We're just feeling what we feel. And yes, it's complicated, but that doesn't make us bad people. He looked at me, his eyes moist. Then why am I so afraid? Because you care, I replied. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't be afraid. He squeezed my hand tighter and leaned his head against my shoulder. We sat like that for a long time, listening to the cries of the seagulls and the distant hum of the fairies. But the secret couldn't last forever. I knew it. Danielle knew it. And with every day I put off talking to Liam, the burden grew heavier. On a cold November evening, everything changed. I was in my apartment, working on a logo for a client who wanted something fresh but classic, whatever that meant. My phone vibrated. Liam. Hey bro, free today? Beer at the Red Door? I looked at my watch. 7:30. I hadn't seen him in weeks. I'd been avoiding him, to be honest, and I knew it would be weird to say no again. Yes, I'll be there in 20, I wrote. The Red Door was our usual hangout, a cheap bar on Capitol Hill with worn wooden chairs, neon signs on the walls, and beer that didn't empty our bankroll. When we walked in, Liam was already sitting in a corner with 2 bottles on the table. He waved at me, smiling broadly. Brother, where have you been? I sat down opposite, taking one of the bottles. Work is going crazy. You know how it is. He nodded, but something in his eyes told me he couldn't believe it. Yes, I understand. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. We talked about little things, his work, a project I was working on, a new TV show he was watching. But beyond the superficial chatter, there was a tension I couldn't ignore. It was like he had something inside him. Finally, after the second beer, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me. Can I ask you something? My stomach tightened. Certainly. He stopped, touching the glass with his fingers. You spend time with my mom? I almost drowned. What? He raised his hand. Don't feel offended. She's just mentioned your name a few times lately. She said you helped her with the photos, that you had coffee. It just seemed a little strange, that's all. I forced myself to breathe evenly. She asked me to take a picture of her a few weeks ago. It's just, I don't know, we started talking more. She's great. That's all. Liam studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay. I mean, I'm glad she has friends. She was pretty lonely after the divorce. I'm just not used to seeing her, so, I don't know, happy. She's good. Really? The guilt hit me like a brick in the chest. He trusted me. He was happy that his mother was happy, and I lied to his face. Yes, I said, in a weak voice that even reached my ears. She deserves to be happy. We finished our beers and went our separate ways. But as we drove home, the cold night air biting my skin, I knew I couldn't go on like this. We had to tell him. Soon. That evening I sent a message to Danielle. We need to talk. Liam is starting to get suspicious. She responded almost immediately. I know. Come tomorrow. Liam will be at work all day. The next day, I arrived at her house around noon. The sun was trying to sneak through the clouds, but the sky remained gray. She opened the door,
looking tired, as if she hadn't slept all night. "Hello," she said softly. "Hello." We went into the living room and sat on the couch. He poured us coffee, but neither of us drank it. "What did he say?" she asked. I told her about the conversation at the bar, about how Liam asked me if I was spending time with her, about how he seemed suspicious but not angry. "Still, we have to tell him," I said. "The longer we wait, the worse it will be." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know. It's just, how do I tell my son that I'm in love with his best friend? How do I explain it to him without him hating us both?" His voice trembled, and he put his hand to his mouth, trying to hold back a sigh. I went closer and hugged her. She clung to me, her shoulders shaking. "We'll tell him together," I whispered into her hair. "We'll be honest. We'll say we didn't plan this, that we didn't mean to hurt him, but that it's real. And we'll give him time." He leaned back, wiping his eyes. "What happens if they don't forgive us?" I took his face in my hands. "Then we can get over this. But I won't give up on you, Daniel. Not now, not after everything that's happened." He looked at me, his eyes red, but filled with something akin to hope. "Are you sure?" "I'm absolutely sure." He kissed me, lightly, slowly, as if he was trying to memorize the feeling in case everything fell apart. "We've decided to tell Liam this weekend. Daniel will invite him to dinner, and I'll come. It'll be awkward, possibly disastrous, but it'll be honest. Those few days before the weekend were the longest of my life. I could barely concentrate on work. Every time my phone vibrated, I jumped, thinking it was Liam, who had somehow found out. Danielle texted me every night, sometimes just a quick, "I'm scared," to which I'd reply, "Me too, but we'll get through this." Finally, Saturday arrived. The evening was scheduled for 6 o'clock. I arrived on my bike, my stomach clenching so hard it made me sick. Liam's car was parked in the driveway. The lights were on. Everything seemed normal, quiet, but I knew that in a few minutes, everything would explode. I knocked on the door. Danielle opened it, pale but determined. "He's in the kitchen," she whispered. I walked in. The smell of fried chicken filled the house. Liam was standing by the stove, stirring something in a pot. He turned and smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Mom said you were coming. Great, man. It's been a while since we had dinner together." I tried to smile back at him, but it was weak. "Yes. Thanks for inviting me." We sat down at the table. Danielle brought the plates, her hands shaking slightly. We ate in an oppressive silence, interrupted only by Liam's attempts to start a conversation about work or the weather. Every minute seemed like an eternity. Finally, after the plates were cleared away, Danielle took a deep breath. "Liam, we need to talk to you." He looked up, his smile fading. "About what?" He looked at me. I nodded. "About us," she said, her voice trembling. "About me and Jaden." Liam frowned. "And you?" I forced myself to speak. "Liam, your mom and I, the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain something I barely understood? Danielle took my hand on the table. The gesture was simple, but it said it all. Liam's face changed. Confusion gave way to shock, then something akin to disgust. "You're kidding." "Liam," Danielle began. "Nu." S-a ridicat atât de brusc încât scaunul s-a răsturnat pe spate. "Spune-mi că asta e o glumă nenorocită." "It's not a joke," I said quietly. "I didn't plan this. It just
happened. He laughed bitterly, without humor. Did it just happen? Are you serious? Mom, he's 23. He's my best friend. I know, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I know how strange it is, how wrong I feel. But Liam, I haven't felt this alive in years. He sees me, not as your mother, not as your teacher, just as me. Liam shook his head, his face red with anger. That's disgusting. Do you understand that? She's my mother, Jaden. My mother, the motherfucker. He looked at me, his eyes shining. I trusted you. You were like a brother to me. And you. He couldn't finish. He picked up the car keys from the table and headed for the door. Liam, stop, Danielle shouted, standing up. But he was already gone. The door slammed shut behind him with a thud. A second later, I heard his car engine start, then the screeching of tires as he drove away. Danielle collapsed back into her chair, her face in her hands, sobbing. I hugged her, feeling helpless, broken. I did what I had to do, I whispered, though the words seemed empty even to me. I was honest. But as I held her trembling body, listening to her cry, I wondered if honesty was enough, or if I had simply destroyed everything that mattered. Liam didn't answer my calls, or Danielle's. A week went by, then 2. He ignored my messages and never came home. Danielle found out from a coworker that he was staying with a friend. She was devastated, overwhelmed with guilt. I lost him, she said over and over. I lost my son. I tried to comfort her, telling her that she just needed time, that she would calm down, but I wasn't so sure either. I had lost my best friend. And as strong as my feelings for Danielle were, this loss hurt me more than I expected. But then, almost 3 weeks after that dinner, my phone vibrated late at night. Liam, we need to talk. See you tomorrow, at the same bar, at lunch. I showed Danielle the message. She put her hands to her mouth, her eyes wide. What does this mean? I don't know, I said, but I'll find out. The next day, I arrived at the red door at noon. Liam was already there, sitting in the same corner where I always did. But he looked different, thinner, tired, older. I sat down in front of him. We sat in silence for a minute, maybe even longer. Finally, he spoke. I was so angry at you, at her. I felt betrayed, like you both had spit in my face. I nodded, not knowing what to say. But then I started thinking, he continued. My mother was unhappy for a long time. After the divorce, she just existed. She took care of me. She worked. But she didn't live. I saw that. I just didn't know how to help. He looked at me, his eyes red. And then you showed up, and she changed. She was smiling again. She was laughing. She looked happy, and I had no idea why. Until I found out. He leaned back, running his hand through his hair. It's still so damn weird, man. That's Mom, and you. You were supposed to be my brother. But I can't deny that she's happy, for the first time in years. My throat tightened. Liam, I never meant to hurt you. I didn't plan to. But I can't pretend I don't feel anything for her. Because I do. So much. He nodded slowly. I know. I see that. And it's even worse, because I can't just tell you to go to hell and never see you again, because you make her happy. He took a deep breath. I need time. I don't know how much, but maybe one day I'll be able to accept this. Maybe. Tears burned my eyes. I reached across the table. Thank you. That's all I can ask for. He looked at my hand for a long moment, then shook it, firmly but briefly. Take care of her, man. If you hurt her, I'll kill you. I laughed, even though tears were streaming down my face. I promise you. When I returned to Danielle and told her about the conversation, she cried so hard she couldn't breathe. But this time, they were tears of relief. He doesn't hate us, she whispered. He doesn't hate us. No, I said, kissing her forehead. He doesn't hate. There was still a long way to go. It took Liam a few more months to really start communicating with us again. The first few times were awkward, tense, but gradually, very slowly, he started to accept us. A year later, Danielle and I moved in together. We were no longer hiding. People talked, of course. Neighbors whispered. A few of her colleagues looked at us disapprovingly. But we didn't care. We had found something rare, a connection that transcended age, expectations, and social conventions. Liam even came to dinner a few times. He still cringed when he saw us holding hands, but he never left. He stayed, and that was all we could ask for. My best friend's mom asked me to take a picture of her. I saw something in her that she hadn't seen in herself in years. And just seeing someone changed everything. If you enjoyed this story, please like it and leave a comment telling us what you think about it.